Well, welcome to the Followup podcast. My name is Hayden. I am the worship director here at Arbor Church, and I was also the speaker on Sunday.
Yeah, you were.
And today I am joined by Bryan Cobley, our youth director, who is showing off his San Francisco Giants gear, and Alison, our community care pastor.
Classic.
Well, I'm going to turn things over to Bryan because I spoke on Sunday, and traditionally I drive the podcast, but I'm the speaker, so it would feel weird for me to ask questions to myself. So,
I'll take over.
Yeah.
So Hayden, every week we ask this question. So how long did you mull over your point? Like, how did you get there? I'm just kidding. I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Should you remind the studio audience what our series was, and then give a setup?
What would you
for
want? What would you want me to say?
Oh, I don't know. I thought that's what you were gonna say. So
Yeah.
that's what
So if I
was
would
gonna say.
if I were to do it, what would I say?
I would have thought you'd say like, so we find ourselves in like the series called Circles,
Okay.
which ...
Yeah. Okay. So we find ourselves in the series Circles.
I'll step in.
So
we've been in. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm
Hayden,
good.
help us.
So we did just wrap up our 3-week series called Circles, where we focused on the 3 circles of influence that we have in our lives. First one is the one I did, which was the home church. I know you say church home, but I just feel like that's a little too close to.
It is tough. I wanted to say church home too.
But so even in the message, I kept saying home church. I didn't want to say church home.
Yeah.
And then you had our next circle, which was the 1 mile radius of Woodinville, and as Hayden jokingly said in your message, we gave you the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. You guys got little circles,
That was hilarious.
and then I got everything outside of the 2 little circles.
So I know you joked about it on stage, but honestly, how did you feel the weeks leading up to your message?
Yeah. So I have preached before. This wasn't my first sermon, but this was my first sermon at Arbor. So I did have a weird sense of like, I should really do a good job, put a lot of time into it. So I don't know what month, it might've been February that we decided to go with Circles, or it might've been January. And then we were talking about who would take each week. And then somewhere along the process, the 3rd week was open, which was the world. And we wanted Scott to do like the week after me for the new series. So then
Originally, we had Scott doing home church.
Yeah, the whole thing. I wasn't going to be in Circles. It was going to be Scott, you, and Alison. And then for whatever reason, I don't know the minutia of it, but Scott got moved to the first week of forgiveness. And then there was an opening for the 3rd. And Alison was like, Hayden, I think you should do it. And I'm like, ugh. And then I thought, actually, if I'm going to speak for the first time at Arbor, this is the most friendly format for me.
And you were the only staff member who has not done it yet.
Yeah, like Michael did it in the summer, and I hadn't done it, and I've tried to stay away from it just because it's not. I don't enjoy doing it all that much. I enjoy the research and having like another reason to get into my Bible amongst like the other things that I'm already doing. So for me, it was like I want to do it, but the idea of being up here for 35 minutes is also terrifying because I think I mentioned a little bit in my sermon, but I have no stage fright singing and playing music. And I know for other people that might be anxiety inducing.
Totally.
But for me to stand up here and just speak for 35 minutes, I'm like, that sounds awful. So
That's so much fun.
Yeah, you guys love it. I'm like,
Alison, do you actually love it? I've never actually asked you that question. Do you actually
I think
love
it depends on the subject that I'm teaching. And there are some subjects that are harder for me than others. And others are a complete delight.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I don't concur. I think it's fun. I think it's fun when like the jokes land.
Yeah.
And there's less pressure on you.
How did you feel about that? Because you did say some jokes, and I was the only one laughing in the back because I thought they were really funny.
No one came up and slugged you, which we felt was a win.
Yes.
Oh, come on. Too soon.
After last night's
Too
Oscars.
soon.
Yeah. No, so I had 2 jokes written out at the beginning of my message. And I think you guys caught it if you watched it or were there in person. I had a moment of like I froze up like right at the beginning.
You did?
Yeah, I was like, and I think I said sorry. I was like, sorry guys. And I was reading my joke on my notes, and I'm like, this is a risky. Like it wasn't inappropriate or anything like that. It was just like it would have required a lot of work from the audience to tell that I was being sarcastic. And you guys on staff have said sometimes it's hard to tell if I'm being sarcastic because I really sell out for jokes.
So did you say it?
No, I skipped over it.
You did.
Yeah.
Let us hear it. Come on.
Well, the delivery is going to be way different now that I'm sitting and we're not on a pot. So what I was going to say.
Stand up.
Yeah.
We got a camera.
No.
You're standing right
I got to
there.
remember.
Stand right there.
So
Do
I
it.
was going to say, I was going to say, hey, just a disclaimer for you guys. I'm a little nervous today. And I know that like I'm usually leading worship and I'm up here a lot, but being up here is a little bit different. I just have some nerves. And I know some of you are probably thinking, Hayden, you are incredibly intelligent, devilishly handsome, and very articulate. And you're kind to say that, but this is why I'm nervous. And even there, you're not catching the joke. Maybe the joke isn't funny, so I skipped over it. But the whole idea was like,
wait, did it happen yet?
yeah, I'm personifying the audience, saying all these positive things about me. And then I say, thank you for saying those things. Even though they didn't say it, I'm saying it about myself. So I realized.
It's a little nuanced.
Yeah, it's very nuanced.
You know, I think we're all playing just normal chess while you're.
I'm trying to like, yeah. So
a very meta.
Yeah, I was trying to make a meta joke of like,
he's
thank
doing
you
that
for saying that
3-layer version.
So I knew, I'm like, you know what? If I make this joke and it bombs, I'm going to be so nervous for the rest of my time up there. So then I was like, I'm going to stick to the surface level, not like really thinky jokes. So I decided to skip that one. And then my other joke was.
And that was a game time decision.
That was it.
Oh, dude.
That was a game time decision.
Also, next time, if you're ever going to do that again and you make that joke, just say, I told you that wasn't going to work, Bryan.
Yeah, exactly.
Then,
Yep. See, and that Alison laughed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I'm trying to think what my other joke. It was similar along those lines of. Oh, the other one was. So it kind of depended how I did the delivery, but I was gonna say like, you know, I usually lead worship. I did it this morning. Now I'm preaching. You're probably thinking, what?
Like
This is
2.0 of the joke, or
This is a
again?
different joke.
But
So-
you should use the same beginning.
Exactly. So I would have workshopped it a little bit, but or I would have used the context. But like, yeah, you see me leading worship. Now I'm preaching. You're probably thinking, what can't you do? You're gonna find out. It's preaching. So, and then I was gonna go from there.
That was a good one.
See, that was a good one, but they were both like a little bit more meta because I'm personifying the audience, right? It's not like setup, delivery, punchline. It is.
Oh my gosh.
It's a little bit more thinky.
Punchline.
Yeah.
So for the audience, I just want you to know that I have so much joy having this conversation with Hayden because him and I get into so many debates about the concept of preaching. And mostly it's like I don't like to use anybody's work. I just try and do research and write a sermon. And I love that Hayden struggled a little bit in trying to make it like
I feel more seen.
trying to make it art because I tell Hayden all the time, you're just not the person I can talk to about this struggle. But now I feel like we're on the same level, man.
Yeah.
I feel like you get me. We even got the crash afterwards where you just felt super exhausted at home after doing it.
Well, and like I said this morning, it's a little different because it wasn't a 35-minute message, but I do feel a little bit of connection to you guys because I also was leading worship as well as preaching. So like I said in our staff meeting today, if I were to preach a 35-minute message and lead worship, I'd have that one up on you guys of like, you guys think you're tired, but wait till you do a 35-minute message and lead worship.
Message one time. Does that count?
And I did that yesterday too.
Oh, dang, you did. You taught us the Jesus loves you thing.
John 3:16.
Oh, yeah, that one. So I do.
So to go all the way back to where this question started of how long did I know about it?
How long did you dread it for?
How long did I dread it for? So Bryan's first week, I had said, because you guys had kind of asked me where am I at in the process, and I was like, I want to see Bryan's message. I want to see Alison's message. Alan's. I guess I'm nervous being in front of the camera too on the podcast.
Which is funny because that's how we started the podcast
I know.
originally. Was
I know.
you in the front and I'm in the back.
Yeah. But I wanted to look at both of your guys' messages. That way I could see like, oh, is there a common thread that I can pull through for my week? And there kind of was, but then I realized, I'm trying so hard to make this cohesive, and I don't think that's my battle to do. Like you guys did really great jobs, but your message, Bryan, and Alison's message did not have a lot of common framework or even question format. So I'm like, I'm going to spend more time trying to make this feel like part 3 of Alison and Bryan's than just a good message. So, but I definitely, I think after Alison spoke, I realized, now I've got the countdown of like, I have to be done with this. And thankfully, Monday I did quite a bit of work. And then Tuesday, I worked with you, Bryan, in the office. We outlined it. Then when you left Wednesday, I came in and Alison and I chatted. Alison was very helpful. Alison provided me with the quote about, if you go down to the pit, I will hold the ropes, which I think was honestly one of the best illustrations in that sermon.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But all that to be said, I was able to wrap up my message and send it off to you guys Wednesday night. Was it? Yeah, I sent it to you.
Which is I've never done that on a week that I've preached. Never have gotten my notes in.
My first time doing
Wednesday
it was circles.
Yeah, you got it to me early.
Oh yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm. Just because I wanted the table leaders to have the questions,
right?
Be prepared ahead of time.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I will say so. To give like the our context as a staff watching you prepare. I do love the 3 weeks leading up to your sermon was, I think I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
The next time we talk to you, like, I think I'm going to do this. Yeah. The next time we talk to you, I think I'm going to do this. Like each time was like a different point, different verses. Yep. Yeah. So.
I think what I found is, we talked about it, and it's something that you and I both identify with, is I had this big desire to do like a paradigm shift of like, could we look at this differently? Could I turn this idea on its head? Could I reinvent the wheel?
Which I think you did with John 3:16.
But
and Acts 1:8.
Yeah, with the oars.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had some really ambitious ideas. Like the first time we talked, I talked about the parable of the sower, and
right.
That's right. You were like, I don't know.
Right.
And then you were like, I like that. And as I went through, I'm like, I could do it, but the amount of follow-up conversations I'd probably have to have after the message to explain everything fully. I just was like, I don't have 35 minutes. So this is probably too ambitious. I need to cut it. And I think I went through a few different ideas that we talked about. And then
Peter, I think, was one of them.
And I was so nervous to tell you guys about John 3:16 because I'm like, man, this is my first sermon here, and to go with something so basic, I'm
supposedly elementary.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Like it wasn't because you included so much. Even that alone preaches, but then you included 17 and 18 too, right? Yeah. So there's more to it.
So let's talk about John 3:16, because I told everybody on stage that when you showed that verse to me, and I told my small group or the table group that when you brought up John 3:16, I'm like, oh my gosh, it actually says world. Like God so loved the world, and I was like, I've known that it says world, but I've never actually like felt or like even loved the world aspect of it. I've always looked at it super individually. And somebody at my table was like, well, I can't blame you. I was like, they're like, how many times have you heard the sermon when a pastor goes up there and says, hey, anytime it says world, put your name on there.
Because it makes it feel a little bit more personal.
More personal. And so I kind of realized, I have seen that sermon technique. Maybe in the future I might have done it, but now that I'm like, actually that ruined my lens of like, I do love that Jesus loves me, and I do love that God did send his son for me, but I also need to remember it wasn't just for me. He does love the whole world.
And one of your discussion questions for the tables was, how do we love like Jesus does?
Yeah.
And why does it feel intangible sometimes? And why is it so challenging?
Yeah.
And I felt like our discussion at our table was amazing.
Yeah.
Just taking that from where you were, that Jesus loves this way. He loves the world. And so do we also.
Well, and I think with that question, it came from an actual like honest and earnest question that I was asking myself, because in my process, I looked up verses about God / Jesus, Holy Spirit, and the world, and the results were good, but underwhelming, right? Like even John 3:16, it says, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, right? But there's no why in there. Like, why does God love everybody? Why does God love even the people that won't choose him? And I got done with that first section, and I felt like I had a great justification for why we should love the world. And the answer was because God loves the world. But that isn't like an inspiring answer, right? Like, you don't hear that and say, oh, I'm going to go out there and love the world now, because I don't think there's like an emotional appeal there from God. It's just like, I love the world, so you should love the world. So that's why I wrote that question of why does it feel intangible?
Since God loves the world and I love the world, I'm going to send my son out into the world.
Yeah.
I don't got to do anything.
Exactly. You can just send Kate out there and he can figure it all out. But that's why I wrote that question was, I understand why I should love the world, but why does it feel challenging and intangible to love the world?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where that question came from.
Yeah, and the answer that I was thinking about when you asked that, what I said with my small group, is I felt like the world is not as mysterious as it once was.
Mm-hmm.
Everything it is, in a sense, so tangible. Like, we can easily hop on Expedia or somewhere, get a super discounted plane ticket, and just go on a vacation somewhere. There's not this sense of like, oh, I'm gonna work my hardest to get there and discover what that it's so easy to get in a sense to the world.
Also, feel free to answer that call. No worries.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Everything okay, Bryan?
Yeah. Are you good?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
We can wait.
I'm driving.
The audience can wait.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't need backseat drivers.
Sorry.
Or text and drive.
Yeah. Drive away. Where are we going next? What's our exit?
I don't know. Did you want to comment on the world being so accessible?
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of it too. Is I think in the early days, what made missionary work so exciting was like there's a group of people that have actually never had a chance to hear about Jesus, right? And that population, I did a little bit of research into that because they call it like world A, world B, world C. Like world C is shrinking just because of the internet, right? And like there's not as many of these remote villages that don't have internet or books printed in their language. Like that population is shrinking. So the idea of reaching, if you go back to like Portuguese missionaries that went to Japan and they had no opportunity to learn about Jesus, that scenario doesn't exist as much anymore. A lot of people have either heard about Jesus through Facebook or they've got a Bible app, whatever in their language.
Somebody shared it. If you don't share this post in 10 minutes.
If you don't share this message, exactly. Jesus is watching. But I think that's part of it too, is like we can see the world. And I think sometimes the innocence of other people is lost through the internet of like, oh, well, these people are attached to, ISIS or these people are responsible for this. And you start to like, I think, lose a little bit of that draw because all the sins of the world. And it doesn't feel like you're reaching to this, I don't know, naive or unknowing group of people. So.
And I will even tell you, talking about the world, this was so funny. When Russia first invaded Ukraine, my heart was praying for the people of Ukraine, hardcore, like praying nonstop for them. It was hard watching TV, and like in my lifetime, being an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, war, like for territory is still it's still
crazy, isn't it?
It's still happening. And I remember praying for Ukraine, and then I had a leader stand up and go and was praying, and then in their prayer they also prayed for Russia and for God to come in and like change leaders' hearts, let them see more, and just actually pray for Russia. And I'm like, once did it like just come to me to also pray for the other side. It was almost like I wrote
but
them off.
Not only discernment for Russia, but also the fact that Russia is a different government than ours, and there's a lot of civilians who don't support Putin, and there's a lot of people that have fallen victim to propaganda, and they don't even know what they're believing is a lie, right? So
so even like that aspect of the world, like and what like you're talking about with social media, internet, they even messed me up to not even pray for the world. So this I tell you, this third circle was incredibly challenging to me, even when on that Tuesday when you and I were talking about the outline and stuff. I was like, geez, like you challenged me in so many ways. Even with a missionary's newsletter, I left after I was going home. I'm like, how did he make me feel horrible about a newsletter?
Well, I think
how did you do that?
I think I made you feel terrible because I also get those same newsletters, and I am not doing that job, and I think that's part of what I tried to speak from on Sunday was my own honesty of like, I'm not telling you guys that I do this any better than you do. I'm just saying, if I'm going to make this commitment, will you make this commitment with me of like, let's not just read those emails or those newsletters and toss them in the trash. Like put it on your fridge, be reminded of it, walk by it and think, we have a friend, David Hamilton, we get his newsletters. What?
And I do nothing with those newsletters.
But we have a close relationship with a lot of missionaries because a lot of our classmates are now missionaries. Yeah. So like we have kind of that built-in interest that some people don't have of like, this is a nameless connection. someone that came back on furlough, and I saw them speak at my church once, and now I have never seen them for 2 years or whatever.
In fact, our table suggested the put on the fridge kind of missionary letter, and I was like, we have a fridge.
I was gonna say, why don't
we're gonna put them on the fridge?
And I told you guys, I told the church that my goal now is actually find out all of the missionaries we support. And I want to know everything they're doing. I want to let everybody know that they're doing that. When I encounter a new person, or even
tell us about Arbor.
Yeah, and or even a current member, that when they talk to me about Arbor, I'm like, let me tell you what's happening through Arbor, what's happening in the world. Like I got so excited to know the difference that we're making that maybe we won't see, but I want to help people hear the story.
I wonder even if we can build that into our framework of when we talk about Arbor, we talk about the circles. We talk about what's going on here at the home base. We talk about the neighborhood. We talk about impact in the world.
We could easily do that in an announcement or close. Like it's so easy for us to just add that in to tell people.
Well, and like even graphically speaking, if it's something that's like on our rotating slides of just having like the circles drawn out, right? And then you have, this is what we're doing in the neighborhood. This is what we're doing at home. This is what we're doing in
or circle stories. Just making sure that we highlight some of these things. It encourages us to like be involved in the different circles if we keep that fresh in our mind.
And I don't know if we'll ever do this, but my church back at home that I grew up going to, they had going into their sanctuary a board, kind of look like like a going in a kid class or hallway, but just a board of all the different missionaries and their story just ready for people to read as they're going into the sanctuary. So I don't know if we'll ever do anything like that, but just having the information accessible, even if that's on our website. I don't think that's even on our website.
A lot of missionaries have privacy issues that
that's true.
Kind of curtail some of that sharing on a public thing. But
Alison, I did want to have a question for you, because you've gotten the best of both worlds of youth ministry and adult ministry. So my table, it was funny, and I assumed there was many other tables that had this as well. Talking about missions, couldn't help but to hear everybody's experience in youth ministry. Now, it's funny, as a youth pastor, I've never been on a international mission trip. I've been on local stuff in like the inner city of San Francisco, all the homeless community that's there. I've been part of local missions, but never international. But it was cool hearing all the different stories of their high school days.
That happened at mine too.
Going on mission trip. But then there's this huge gap of adulthood where it's not happening. So I want to ask you, in your best of both worlds, where you've been in the youth ministry as a high capacity leader with mission trips, to now being pastor of care ministry here and just being more around adults than teenagers, what's the gap?
Well, I think you and I, did you do APU missions?
No.
Down in Mexico?
I did 6 years of Amor Ministries, which is in San Diego, that goes to Tijuana.
It's really similar than the APU experience that I did too. But it's like, how many adults are willing to go sleep in the dirt in a tent for a week with no showers?
In 100-degree heat,
your capacity for suffering, it just looks different. So like back in the day, we would take 100 teenagers down and sleep in the dirt, not have a shower, do all the hard work, etc. And teenagers somehow are really resilient physically. I think adults think they couldn't do it. So when you then go and you think, okay, we're going to go on a missions trip and we're going to provide you with a hotel and restaurant food or whatever and showers, all of a sudden your cost differential goes up and it becomes less profitable for 100 adults to go into a hotel. It doesn't serve the people very well when you're at a cost like that.
I would love to go to a sandals resort and then take an excursion to go do some missions.
Right. As I go ziplining through with my Bible in my hand.
Take my Jeep back to my sandals resort.
So I think there is something about those teen years that it builds in this different sort of resiliency, and you're able to do things at a cost that isn't going to be cumbersome for the community that you're going to serve. Because at some point, there's a tipping point between, why don't you just send the money and encourage locals to have that industry there instead of like suburban kids going down for all that cost.
I think there's a ton of value to those trips. I mean, I went on 6 of them. I've heard a lot of people go on these short-term trips, right? Like 10 to, let's say, maybe 3 weeks, right? 10 days to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And for me, like, it opened up perspective, right? Like,
yes.
I think the biggest thing people usually take away from a Mexico missions trip is like how much stuff we have and like the contentness that we see from a lot of these like Mexican nationals down there. But I think really like the real purpose of that those trips is to kind of open your eyes to like, is this something God's calling me to do? Be a part of the mission field, and can I get out of my comfort zone and be a part of this? And I think the answer for most kids is no. You know, I think there's some missionaries that come out of that, but for me, it was eye opening, and it was something I enjoyed doing, but it was also never something that I felt God was calling me to like. I want you to go live in another country and do this long term. So, and I think that short term missions have kind of taken a little bit of a hit because we've kind of learned that not all of them are done well, and some of them are really. The issue is the focus shifts towards the Americans coming in and like, you guys are doing the great work. That's awesome. Whereas, you know, I don't know how APU, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I don't know how APU did it, but Amora was like, they had the local pastor on the job site with us, right? So the connection was
the
always,
local pastor could be the hero.
Exactly, right? Like they could be the connection, not the Americans rolling in with their 15-passenger van. They build the house, give the keys over, right? Versus like, no, you're going to talk to this guy once we leave. We're just here for 10 days.
Right.
We'll build you a house.
Right.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to, you know, minister to you a little bit in that time, but then we're gone.
Yeah.
And we're probably never going to talk again. So you should really connect with this local pastor. So.
Yeah. Oh, I like the framework of that.
Yeah.
It was cool because there was a guy at my table who was talking about when he was in high school, they went down, I believe it was Mexico as well, and built a church. And he talked about it being cinder blocks and like a tin roof. And he was like, he told me he did that over 20 years ago. And I was like, man, it'd be so cool for you to
go back,
and see that church, see if that church still exists, or was that the starting spot for that congregation, and now they're in a bigger facility. Like you helped start, like, because that's one of the hardest parts about short-term missions is you usually don't get to see the fruit that comes out of it and trust that hard work is going. But Hayden, you talked about 6 years that you did that mission trip.
Yeah.
How many years has it been since?
I gotta do the math. Probably 7 years.
7 years.
I'm
so
27 and I stopped my sophomore year of college. So rough math, I think 7 years.
So you've been more years removed.
Which is sad because it was like a big part of my life. Like that was a family
thing.
You would
do. I think there was so many conversations we had in Bible college where you talked about Mexico.
Yeah.
Like there was I've almost been to your Mexico mission trips at this point.
Well,
of how many times I've heard your stories.
For me, like I wish that I could have. This is gonna sound sad because I haven't lived a long life, but like I wish I could just go back to like my senior year summer and just live that summer over and over again. Because I remember it was like right before I decided to go to Bible college, so I did Mexico in June, and then I did summer camps in July, and I also did like a third one in August. And for me, it was just like, this is what I want to do. And that's why when I got to Bible college, I was like, I want to be a youth pastor. And then I switched out of that because I'm like, that sounds awful. And God had someone else for Arbor.
Yeah, right. And you became friends with one. So
yeah, exactly. But I was like, no, I think worship's more my thing. But I just like, those times in Mexico were so transformative. Part of it is being ripped out of your old life, right?
Comfort.
You're not back in your hometown with your old friends in high school. Like you were with 100-something like-minded people, and you're around pastors and volunteers from the church. And then I went to summer camp and all of that. And I wish I could be back in that stage because I was like, this was a full summer where I was just like every single day involved in something very big and I guess spiritual, if you want to call it that. So that's I miss Mexico quite a bit.
Yeah, I do hope one of the big things that comes out of this third circle is the Arbor can be a little bit more missionary minded.
Yeah.
Than like whether we have somebody on staff or congregate who's like, hey, I want to host one. I want to get a missions trip started.
Well, and we don't have to go too far from here to have a cross-cultural experience. Yeah. Our youth group actually back in the day morphed from going down to Mexico all the time because border violence became a real concern. And parents in our ministry encouraged us to get a little more creative and not just keep going down to violent border areas. Yeah. So we started doing backyard mission trips, which we spent the night at the church. We brought in food at the church, still didn't shower, but then served in Seattle. Yeah. So it was, those were really formative too. I think some of the things that go into a mission trip that are formative spiritually are dying to self, right? Out of your comfort zone and away from devices and putting others before yourself and being awakened in the morning with like spiritual habits and then having worship and time in the Word and fellowship. I mean, all those things are just packed full in that week. So,
and I think,
we may not need to go to Mexico for it, is what I'm saying.
But I will say there is something about going to Mexico and having a 10-day sunburn. And then, like, what's funny about Mexico is, or at least the part where we were at in Tijuana, is it's similar to Boise, like high desert. So hot during the day, cold at night. But then you're so cold that you have to put the sleeping bag over your head, but then your face is radiating heat because you've had a sunburn for 10 days. And you're just like, I wish I could sleep, but my toes are freezing, but my face is sweating because I've got, like, there's a certain amount of, like, discomfort that
I want to do this so bad.
You realize that, like, not only can you overcome so much, but, like, God has also given you the ability to overcome these really fleshly issues, right? Of, like, that wasn't a pun talking about sunburns, but it worked. But like sunburns, right? And like not having, like we took shower bags down, like the camping shower bags. So we at least got to shower.
Oh.
But it was like, you showered in front of 20 other people, it was like a weird setup. But like it was still uncomfortable.
Different kind of trip.
But like you're still picking sand out of your food a little bit. And you're like, so it's not a comfortable thing, but I think after the first couple of days, you're like, no, like this is fun. Like I'm enjoying this. This is good, even though it's extremely uncomfortable. And one of the things that you said about Seattle, I think every time we do the podcast, we talk about things that we wish we had more time for. That was something that I wanted to hit a little bit harder. And I know we're limited on time, but the idea that when I talk about the world, I'm really talking about everything outside of the 1 mile radius to the world. And I know that for whatever reason, we focus on like world missions or global missions, but I wanted the focus to be, and I wish I could have highlighted, like there's things that we can do in Seattle, right? That will impact the world. You don't necessarily have to go to Africa or Asia or Mexico.
Like even though the mile stops at Costco, we can still go to Costco gas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So like when you're fueling up, you are stimulating the global economy and being a mission. So
I do want to say this because I know we're out of time.
We can go a little bit over,
but I do want to talk about that quote.
The William Carey quote.
Yeah, I'll go in the pit if you hold the ropes.
Yeah. So all the credit obviously goes to William Carey and Andrew Fuller, but then the extra credit goes to Alison. She's the one that pointed me to that because you were telling me about a workshop that you went to where they said you should include 5 to 7 illustrations,
metaphors, or examples.
Because it helps people understand. Yeah. And at that point, I think I had like 2, and then I raised it up to 3 with your quote. But that quote was so what I was looking. It was exactly what I wanted to.
And so amazing. Yeah. And just I put myself in the shoes of William Carey in that moment of how amazing was it that they can just have no stress of money, no stress of resources. Because they knew that there was a man back at home going to the places for them, getting the help that they need so they can keep it
and I
going.
I loved that quote because I wish I could have also spent more time on advocating. But the end of that quote from about Andrew Fuller, what he did, I was going to say stateside, but they were British. So British stateside was.
That's why I said back at home.
Yeah. He did all the work so that the missionaries could just focus on the field because they knew that he was advocating for them back home. And that's something that I would love for us to take on that responsibility.
I would love that.
We should be advocating for these people because they're going out and they're living with a 365-day sunburn, and they're living, sometimes not sleeping on great stuff.
And it's kind of like we kind of shifted to where they almost need to do the work, be like, all right, guys, we're down to our last dollar. Yeah. Let me go back stateside and now let me start fundraising again.
Exactly.
So we can go. They have to completely pause their mission field, their hard work to go get some more resources and then go back.
The mental distraction of trying to meet budget or being like close to
we have that just at our own home in our own world. Yeah. Imagine them trying to do the hard work, but now there's this frustration and pressure of money that's now getting in the way of like what could have been a good 2 hours working on a message of the gospel is maybe 30 minutes of it, and there's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this message, but who knows how long I'm going to be able to do this for? Like that 30 minutes.
Or imagine your sermon prep and then realizing I also have to translate this to a different language.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so that
or I have to use illustrations.
Google Translator.
Yeah, I have to learn those parables.
That quote was so powerful.
I love that quote.
Not just powerful, but take away the quote. That event is so powerful that he did have Fuller going, and it said that he was going to different places preaching mission-related sermons.
Yeah.
And, oh, man.
That's so intentional, to drive interest and support.
Which is a mission for Fuller in itself, too.
Right.
Because he's doing more of the local mission, but the local mission is to help the global mission.
And that article gave me like so many main points to speak on because he has another quote, Andrew Fuller, where he says everyone's called to be a missionary, or everyone's called to spread the gospel, but only some are called to do it cross-culturally. That for me was like, boom, that's a point right there that I don't have to even work on because he did it for me. Like, and that's why I said everyone's called. What did I say? Everyone's called to the mission, but not everyone's called to the mission field, right? Like the idea of
good quote. Yeah, good point.
So, I loved that quote, and thank you, Alison, for bringing that to my attention because that really helped me
for bringing it to Arbor's
exactly
attention.
It's funny what you ran through your whole message with me, and that was the one thing that I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if this quote would work.
Yeah.
So it's funny how.
And I did a little bit of research because I wanted to make sure that like William Carey wasn't
cancel cultured.
Well, that's always a good thing to look through.
Like, are we able to use this guy anymore?
But also I was like, I want to make sure that he's not being derogatory towards India by saying like, I will go down to the pit. So I had to like research like, what did he mean by that? Is he not calling is he calling India a pit? Like, I'll go down into Sodom and Gomorrah if you hold the ropes. Like that was just like the way he said it, and there wasn't any sort of evidence of him like besmirching the name of India. So, but yeah.
All right.
I can't think of anything else to really talk about for the message. If I had more time, I probably would not have done this message. So I'm glad that I
Hayden!
Maybe
Maybe
your jokes would have landed a little bit better.
We will have more from Hayden in the future for sure.
We will have more from Hayden. Hayden, would you like
gotten that kind of feedback
to close us off of Circles?
Yeah. Of Circles or the podcast?
Both.
Okay. Well, I already closed yesterday, so if you want to close to that, go check out the message. And then Alison and Bryan came up and closed again. But for the podcast, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys next week.
In our own world, imagine them trying to do the hard work, but now there's this frustration and